Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an upload full of a lot of information in regards to what we've been talking about as of late. Also, some just horrific experiences. Before we jump into it all, couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? Yesterday's upload, I talked a lot about Nephilim, Reptilian, portals, Dulce, some Dogman encounters, and the connection with all of that. Even threw in some Project Mannequin information, which is the Super Soldier project, which is also connected because there is a certain project within that project that people sit in a chair, young kids, young teenage boys, or young females, usually boys, sit in this chair and do these psyop kind of activities where they try to open portals in this room. And once a portal was open and something came out, it is all connected. Regardless of what anyone thinks, I truly 100% believe it is, because the puzzle pieces are fitting together. It would be crazy not to think that these are not connected. I used to think Skinwalker Ranch was some anomaly, because you've got ghost activity, spirit activity, cryptid activity, UFO activity, cattle mutilation, human mutilation, Dogman, Skinwalker, shape-shifting, you name it, it happens there. I used to think, and I still do think, there is a deep underground military base around that area. But thinking that it was an anomaly was a step back, because now learning everything we have and talking about it, Tom Horn said it perfectly. And I had it was crazy, because 4 days prior, I was up in the mountains and I was talking about how possibly our government made connections with Native Americans, black magic shamans, to teach them how to open portals, to harness the energy, to create this, make pacts with reptilians, this, and that. Tom Horn talks about how the connection was well before biblical times, happening even in North America, the Anunnaki, which science tells us they just disappeared randomly. What they did was, science tells us that they spread apart and blended into the Pueblo, Hopi, and Navajo and other. No, they one day vanished. Also, there's a reason why the Pueblo and other Native Americans, tribes in that region, the southwestern region, built their homes in caverns. Well, because giants ruled the earth. And you have a longhouse or a teepee, and you're not protected. You may be protected from the rain, from the sun, from the elements, but not from a giant. And that's why there are petroglyphs depicting giants, depicting horned creatures, dog-like creatures, crawler-like creatures. Anyway, so last week I shared 3 case reports with you guys. One was from a reverend, where he talked about some reptilian stuff that he had gone through and he was dealing with. One of them was where a guy had a glitch and went into an alternate dimension. And then the final one was talking about the Montauk, the Hammer of Time, Montauk Project, and the Draconian Overseers. Well, and how they had infiltrated, the Draconians had infiltrated the NSA, CIA, and all the other alphabet agencies. So these case files are different than encounters that, are submitted by folks. And the only difference, they're not better. The only difference is these have actually been researched extensively and experienced by multiple people and researchers, not just cryptid researchers, but scientific researchers and such. Doesn't make them any more better or any more believable. It just has a little more backing to them. And by these having backing to them, to me, what that does is that gives more credence to all of our experiences. So I'm going to share some of those with you guys. Really quick, just want to make this statement. Comment in yesterday's upload. I had talked about the Algonquin and said something about my neck of the woods. And this guy said, the Algonquin live in Eastern Canada. They have never been in New York. And my response simply was, please research what you just said. Because if he did, he would realize that at one point in time, the Algonquin Nation extended even to parts of Virginia. To be honest, look it up. It's crazy. And then he said there are no Algonquin in New York. Never was. Well, the Montauk Native Americans are a relation of the Algonquin. Algonquin had no tribe or clans. They had no, subsidiary tribes, but they had relations. That would make them Algonquin. I don't know. It's just, it's so funny because, he was just such a rude, condescending person about it. Yet, why not look it up? Have at least the backing to slam it in my face. And I wasn't looking to be right. I was just sharing something. And he's like, dude. Anyway, let's get into this. Once again, these case files have been researched by scientific researchers and others and are documented. Reptilian experiences. Reptilians, humanity's historical link to the serpent race. John Carpenter has kept a close track of abduction phenomena. He is the director of abduction research for the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON. one of the largest and most credible organizations dedicated to the scientific study of UFOs and abductions. Carpenter holds a master's degree in social work, highly qualified hypnotherapist who works as a psychiatric social worker in Springfield, Missouri. Since the late 80s, he has worked with more than 100 abductees and compiled information on hundreds of others. In addition, he is in contact with other researchers in the field. He has been involved in 10 cases where experiences have been described reptilian entities, and he is aware of researchers in other parts of the country with similar cases. Abductees often have distinct claw-like cuts and bruises on their body after their apparent abduction. Carpenter summarized what he knows of these beings in his regular column, Abduction Notes, MUFON UFO Journal, April 1993. Typically, these reptilian creatures are reported to be about 6 to 7 feet tall, upright with lizard-like scales, greenish or brownish in color, with claw-like four-fingered webbed hands. Their faces are said to be a cross between a human and a snake, with a central ridge coming down from the top of their head to a snout. Adding to their serpent-like appearance are their eyes that have vertical slits in their pupils and golden irises. Perhaps the most frightening and most controversial part of these are claims that the creatures occasionally reported to have blank with abductees. Which we all know that abductees have claimed to be violated by certain alien races. I mean, it's no secret if you look into Dulce that the cloning program is not only done in a lab, but done in an environment where the human subjects are enchained and in cages. So, case number 2, Our Haunted Planet by John A. Keel. The parahuman serpent people of the past are still among us. They were probably worshipped by the builders of Stonehenge and the forgotten ridge-making cultures of South America. In some parts of the world, the serpent people successfully posed as gods and imitated the techniques of the superintelligence. This led to the formation of pagan religion centered around human sacrifice. The conflict, so far as man himself was concerned, became one of religions and race. Whole civilizations based upon the worship of these false gods rose and fell in Asia, Africa, South America. The battleground had been chosen, and the mode of conflict had been decided upon. The human race would supply the pawns. The mode of control was complicated as usual. Human beings were largely free to direct control. Each individual had to consciously commit himself to one of the opposing forces. The main battle was for what was to become known as the human soul. Once an individual had committed himself, he opened a door so that an indefinable something could occur, enter his body, and exercise some control over his subconsciousness. The serpent people, or Omega Group, attacked men in various ways, trying to rid the planet of man. But the superintelligence was still able to look over man. God worked out new ways of communication and control, always in conflict with the serpent people. I really like that whole God is watching over us. There are false idols, false gods that want to come and, That was great, that last line. Because no doubt the serpent race at one point in ancient humanity could have wiped us out, but they didn't. Because God had a whole different path for humanity. Case file number 3 by Lauren Coleman. One classic Bigfoot experience discussed in some detail in Mysterious America, namely the Wetzel Riverside, California sighting on November 8th, 1958, clearly fits the reptilian mode better than the anthropod one. Wetzel described, as you can recall, the fluorescent-eyed thing as having a protubular mouth and covered in scales, looking like leaves. Wetzel's thing emerged from the Santa Ana River underbrush. The connection to water is a strong theme in these accounts, so it is not surprising that the next puzzle comes from the lake monster file. Trekking up the west coast, the following report concerns a monster that actually looks like it stepped out of the wardroom room of the Black Lagoon movie. Thesis Lake is near Cottonwood, British Columbia, not far from Victoria, Cadborough Bay off Victoria and Vancouver Island, and is well known for the perennial sea monster, Cadborosaurus. So understandably, a new creature in the neighborhood would be grouped under the same type of facade by the press. But the thesis monster appears to be something else altogether. August 19th, 1972, Gordon Pike and Robin Flewellen said a 5-foot-tall animal appeared on the surface of Thesis Lake and chased them from the beach. Flewellen was cut on the hand by 6 razor-sharp points atop of the monster's head. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer was quoted at the time as saying, "The boys seem sincere, and until we determine otherwise, we have no alternative but to continue our investigation." The next Wednesday afternoon, the 23rd of August, the Thesis monster was encountered again. Mike Gold and Russell Van Nice said they saw it around 3:30 p.m. and on the other side of the lake away from the recreational area of its first appearance. Gold noted, "It came out of the water and looked around, then it went back into the water. We ran." He described the creature as shaped like an ordinary body, like a human being body, but it had a monster's face, and it was scaly with a point sticking out of its head and great big ears. It was silver. The Thesis monster. Thetis monster accounts sound similar to some from Saginaw, Michigan, occurring in 1937. Where a man-like monster climbed out of the riverbank, leaned against a tree, and then returned to the river. The fisherman who witnessed this appearance suffered a nervous breakdown. This Saginaw tale, the reports of a clawed 3-toe print in Wisconsin, to Missouri, and other supposedly Bigfoot or mammalian encounters, perhaps, should be re-examined in light of the reptilian creatures. The Deltox Swamp, Wisconsin Flap, investigated by Ivan T. Sanderson in 1979, for example, has always been shelved as a Bigfoot report. But what is to be made of the tracks of the creature? The footprints of a good-sized man with swim fins. This trait is more frequently characterized in the so-called Eastern Bigfoot reports than you might realize. More example, there is a case of the creature of Charles Mill Lake in Manfield, Ohio, a green-eyed 7-foot-tall, seemingly armless humanoid seen late in March 1959 by Michael Lane, Wayne Armstrong, and Dennis Patterson. came out of the lake and left behind tracks that resembled the footgear worn by skin divers. The thing was seen again in 1963 and described as luminescent, green-eyed. I examined the site of these encounters and can testify to the Charles Mill Lake's swampy epithets. Certainly a good home for a creature like this. In 1973, during the summer, residents of New Jersey, Newton, Lafayette area described a giant man-like alligator they had seen locally. Newspaper reports wrote about an old Native American tale from the region that told of a giant man-sized fish that could never be caught. In 1977, New York State conservation naturalist Alfred Hulstruck reported that the state's southern tier had a scaled man-like creature that appears at dusk from the red algae-ridden waters to forage among the fern and moss-covered uplands. The New York/New Jersey record, however, cannot compare to the overwhelming series of narratives issuing from one place in the United States, the Ohio River. Over 20 years, by digging into the back issues of the Louisville, Kentucky Courier Journal, was discovered one of those gems that has kept me pondering the meaning for 2 decades. The interesting little item was from the 24th of October issue of 1978, A Wild Man of the Woods. And I have actually talked about this one because I have a stack of newspapers dating back from like the early 1900s. Wild Man from the Woods was captured supposedly in Tennessee and placed in exhibit in Louisville. The creature was described as being 6 feet tall, 5 inches, having eyes twice the size of the normal size, its body covered in scales. This article now makes some sense. And then almost 100 years later, again near Louisville, there are more stories of reptilian entities. 1878, that issue was, I'm sorry. In October of 1975, near Milton, Kentucky, Clarence Cable reported a giant lizard was roaming the forest near his junkyard. Author Peter Gatilla described the creature, Cable surprised, as about 15 feet in length and had a foot-long forked tongue, large eyes that bulged something like a frog's. It was dull white and black and white stripes across its body with quarter-sized speckles all over it. One site field investigator, Mark A. Hall, however, indicated this giant lizard ran bipedally. According to other Trimble County, Kentucky witnesses, the Ohio River is Louisville, Milton, and Trimble County's northern boundary. In 1955, August 21st, near Evansville, Indiana, Mrs. Darwin Johnson was almost pulled forever into the depths of the Ohio River in what seems to be a very close meeting with one of these creatures. Mrs. Johnson of Godtown, Indiana, was swimming with her friend, Mrs. Chris Lamble, about 15 feet from the shore when suddenly something grabbed her from under the surface. It felt like a hand had huge claws and furry, in quotations, or scaly, palms. It came up from behind and grabbed her left leg, grabbing her knee and pulled her under. She kicked and fought herself free. It pulled her under again. Although both women could not see the thing, they were screaming and yelling to scare it away. Finally, Mrs. Johnson lunged for Mrs. Lamble's inner tube, and a loud thump apparently scared it away, and it released its grip. Back on shore, Miss Johnson received treatment for cuts and marks on her leg. 14 investigator Terry Colvin passed on the information that Miss Johnson had a palm print-shaped stain below her knee that could not be removed. It remained for several days. Interestingly, Colvin learned the Johnsons were visited by an individual who introduced himself as the Air Force Colonel, who took voluminous notes and warned them not to talk further about the incident. Of course, this sounds so similar to the Men in Black encounters that this goes almost without saying. You know, when an encounter is followed by government officials saying, do not talk about this, that's when things are bad. Just like the guy in Pennsylvania, the fisherman that had gone camping during COVID and brought his dog with him. All of a sudden, Dogmen are in this campsite. Other campers are shooting at the thing. I mean, it's just crazy. Government officials showed up at his house, said, shut up, don't talk about this. For anyone who has seen Creature from Black Lagoon, the Ohio River encounter of Miss Darwin Johnson is already familiar, for her attack was foreshadowed in the movie. In 1972, in March of that year, two separate other occasions, 2 Ohio police officers saw what was known to become the Loveland Frog, investigated by Ron Schaefer and Richard Mackey. These researchers interviewed the officers involved, but have not published their names. Instead, use fictitious names, Williams and Johnson. The first incident took place at 1 a.m. on the 3rd of March, 1972. On a clear, cold night, Officer Williams was en route to Loveland via Riverside Road when he thought he had seen a dog beside the road, but when the thing stood up, its eyes illuminated by the car's lights, looked at him for an instant, turned and leapt over the guardrail. Williams saw it go down the embankment into Little Miami River, a mere 15 or so miles from the Ohio River. He described the thing as a face like a frog or lizard. Williams went to the police station and returned with Officer Johnson to look for evidence of the creature. They turned up scrape marks leading down the side of the small hill near the river. On approximately the 17th of March, 1972, Officer Johnson was driving outside of Loveland when he had a similar experience, seeing an animal lying in the middle of the road. He stopped to remove what he thought was a dead critter. Instead, when the officer opened his squeaky door, the animal got up into a crouched position like a football player. The creature hobbled to the guardrail, lifted its legs over, while consistently looking at Johnson. Perhaps it was a funny smirk on its face, but Johnson decided to shoot at it. He missed. He figured since the thing didn't slow down, Johnson later told how he felt it was more upright than the way Williams described it. One area farmer told investigators he saw a large frog-like or lizard-like creature during the same month as these officers' sightings. We'll do 2 more case files. Case file 4, World of the Incredible but True. Charles Berlitz, Fawcett Crest Books, New York. There have been numerous Bigfoot sightings in the United States and all around the world. The human-like creatures are usually said to be large and hairy with glowing eyes. During the summer of 1988, however, residents of Bishopville, South Carolina, reported accounts of a rare breed of Bigfoot. A tall, 7-foot-tall lizard man with green scaly skin. According to the witness, unlike other Bigfoot creatures, Lizard Man has 3 toes on each foot, as well as long ape-like arms that end in 3 fingers, tipped with 4-inch claws. Only the second Bigfoot to have only 3 fingers on each hand. The first to also have 3 toes on each foot. Lizard Man is the most unusual Bigfoot ever reported. Well, it's not a Bigfoot. I don't know why this man, Charles Berlitz, would compare the two. They're obviously two different entities. Just because it's large and tall? It doesn't make sense, right? Whatever. 17-year-old Chris Davis first encountered the lizard man at around 2 in the morning, June 29th. On his way home, the teen stopped near the brackish waters of Skateboard Swamp outside of Bishopville to first change a flat tire. While replacing the jack in his car's trunk, he glimpsed something running across the field toward him. Jumping into his '76 Toyota Celica, he was quickly engaged in a tug-of-war with the reptilian creature. As he tried to pull the door closed, the lizard man onto the roof, he left scratches in the paint as evidence of the attack. Hysterical, Davis returned home and told his parents and only a few close friends. Law enforcement, however, interrogated him after neighbors said the boy might know something about strange bite marks and scratches found on another car. Davis wasn't alone in his report. Soon other reports were flooding the sheriff's office. Teenager Rodney Nolf and Shane Stokes, for example, were driving near the swamp with their girlfriends when this lizard-like creature darted across the road in front of their car. Construction worker George Holman also claimed the lizard man jumped at him as he was collecting water from an artesian well. Investigating the area around the swamp, State Trooper Mike Hodge and Lee County Deputy Sheriff Wayne Atkinson found 3 crumbled 40-gallon cardboard drums. The tops of the saplings were ripped off 8 foot off the ground, and there were, according to Hodge, humongous footprints, 14 by 7-inch impressions in the red clay. Following the tracks for 400 yards, the officers backtracked and found new prints impressed in their car tires. According to wildlife biologists, the footprints matched no known animal species. Case file number 5 from Omaha, Nebraska. Metro update for October 29th through November 4th, 1990. Article by reporter Patricia C. Reese titled, "Lincoln Man Recounts Abductions by Aliens." People have been talking about flying saucers for about 45 years now, longer if you count the reports of the so-called Foo Fighters seen by pilots on both sides of World War II. But within the past 20 years, we've been hearing more about a more frightening side of these visitations, abductions by aliens. The most famous case was that of Barney and Betty Hill, 2 New Englanders returning home from vacation and unable to account for a large block of missing time. Under hypnosis, a very frightening and detailed account of an alien abduction emerged. Later, there was Betty Anderson, who told of aliens who took her through walls and closed doors. Then came Bud Hopkins, who made a study of such abductions and chronicled one case in Intruders, the Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods. Next came the Gulf Breeze sightings in Florida, and most recently author Whitley Strieber's accounts of his own abduction in his books Communion and Transformation. While most of these abductions took place in the East, some say the visiting aliens have been just as busy in the Midwest, even Nebraska. A Lincoln man recently recounted his experiences during a talk at the Oakcrest Institute in Elkhorn. John Foster had been an engineer in Lincoln for a number of years. Lincoln, in fact, is his hometown and the place where his abduction experiences began back in the 50s. A soft-spoken, down-home type of guy, Foster reminds people of a young Joel McRae. Alien abduction is terrifying and traumatic experience, Foster told the audience. Psychiatric counselors don't know how to deal with this, even if you can get them to believe you. Foster has gotten help and understanding from people like Dr. Leo Spickle of the University of Wyoming, who has dealt with numerous alien abduction cases. He also had been the subject of ridicule and rejection by both family and friends. Often, in a UFO abduction experience, things happen that are absolutely unbelievable. I have been told that it is not uncommon for families to break up after such an experience. Finally, reached the point where I no longer care what people think of me, Foster said. He said he was not fully aware of what happened to him over the years until the 80s. In 81, he was sitting outside of his home in Lincoln with a friend, And on a lark, they both said a prayer that they would see a flying saucer, and soon after, one appeared. On another occasion, in 1966, he saw a light out behind the trees as he sat on his patio. He said that the sight triggered a distant memory of something that had happened to him when he was in grade school back in the 50s in Lincoln. He said 40 to 50 people were outside watching a movie when swirling lights suddenly appeared, along with a craft that initially looked like a helicopter. Foster recalled being incapacitated and feeling strange. He said he saw the craft appear with 3 little men who appeared to be fixing it. He felt an overwhelming desire to get inside the craft, but once he did, he discovered it was in a different form. He got a lesson about history, mankind, and something about the Native Americans in Buffalo, he said. When he looked around him, Foster said he noticed that everyone else seemed to be frozen in time. They all looked like statues. He said he saw a woman who told him she had fixed herself up so that he wouldn't be traumatized. He said he was taken to an examining room by the creatures that looked like frogs or lizards. The woman told him they were the educators and would supervise his learning experience. He said, among other strange things, Foster recalled that the lizard man encouraged him to join a Masonic lodge. After he was examined, Foster said he was sent back out of the craft to the crowd below. The woman spoke to him in the most scolding tone, saying that from then on he would be a good boy and mind his parents. The woman seemed to know a lot about him, including the fact that he and some friends had stolen some pop and candy from a store across the street. In 1986, Foster went camping with his wife and children in the Niobra Park, and he had a short visitation which awakened more memories of previous abductions, he said. By mid-December, he recalled 50 abduction experiences. He said that by January, that number had grown to 2,000, and by January of 87, 3,000 abductions. Foster reported memories of 50 of the abductions in detail, another 450 short notations, and many others by locations only, he said. There are roughly 2 areas of the so-called close encounters, Foster said. These may mesh together, but there are the abductees who seem to be taken aboard the craft to be examined, and the contactees who appear to be contacted throughout life seem to have an assignment. I wonder if that's because the chip, like they have like something to do, you know? Could be. It's interesting though. I never thought about it like that. In 87, June, Foster and his daughter met with several other contactees, and he had a feeling that he knew them all his life. They helped him recall experiences from coast to coast and from Canada to Mexico. I believe the UFO experiences had directed at you personally, Foster said, but there are times when they can seem to address the population in general. This is what seems to be the case with the mysterious corn circles that first appeared in England and can now be seen in Canada, in the US, and other such places. Foster said profound things happened to him during his abduction, and the world should know about them. He has shown how the visitors came manipulate atomic structure and change things directly at will, he said, and was told things scientific matter over the years, only to see them discovered afterward. While the entities he initially encountered looked reptilian, he said, the spiritual guides were more human in appearance and were able to phase in and out of the deeper levels. The initial level of the abduction experience, there is a kind of excitement, Foster said, while on the deeper level, life plans emerge and there is an interaction with people who have had similar experiences. Foster said there are 4 witnesses who can recall parts of at least 3 of his encounters. Foster said that to document his experience, he has made several drawings and paintings. He believes he has encountered at least 13 different kinds of crafts. Foster said that he remembers abductions that involved his friends when they were teenagers. A large floating phone booth would descend from the dark fog, he said, and a voice seemingly from the loudspeaker would urge them to gather around for eternal wisdom and knowledge. And something else about Native Americans in the buffalo. The voice over the loudspeaker would call them by name and could at times sound sarcastic. On one occasion, his friend shot at the phone booth with rifles and threw beer cans at it. When he was on Mahoney Lake in 1987, Foster said he again saw the booth and the saucer. He asked the entities to quit bothering him because he was disturbed when he couldn't recall his abductions. He said, and they told him if he remembered the experiences, it would negate their purpose. They also told him that if he did not want to have any more abduction experiences, he would meet some people who would help him become more metaphysical, he said, and later met such people. He said he recalls being pulled up into a kind of floating bus and taken into the future. He declined to say what he saw. Foster said he was given experiments to do as an engineer. They worked, but they shouldn't have, according to what we now know, he stated. He said the guides told him they were preparing people for the time when the chosen would be taken away. I was told to awaken people to other dimensions and participate in these realms, he said. So that was 5 case files dealing with reptilians. Ranging and a bunch of other things. I've got 34 case files right here. I'm not going to share them. I'll share a couple each day. But once again, one of these was shared to us by a reverend. A MUFON psychiatric social worker is talking about these things. Yet the public wants to deny. How in the hell can the public deny these things exist when there is soft disclosures every day? Movies, TV shows, every day about these things. Soft disclosures about reptilians, Bigfoot, Dogman, Paranormal. How do you deny it? How do you deny it? You can't. You just can't. Yet. Here's something I thought about. The missing YouTuber, Kenny Veach, in the M cave. Was that M for military? Or was that cave like just the M for, identifying marker? Like maybe there's an N, an O cave, but he stumbled upon this M cave, went back to find it. Never was seen again, ever. They never found hide nor hair of him. Still. That doesn't make sense. And there was this kind of like metallic kind of noise, this vibration that he felt and heard. Crazy. Let's get into some encounters. Today's first encounter. This is the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced. It happened 4 years ago when my boyfriend and I were still fresh into our relationship. My sister had recommended to me to go snorkeling for a fun thing to do with him. We went to Lake Phoenix, located in Brunswick County, Virginia. It's a quarry surrounded by a campground that is best known for its crystal clear water and diving. There's apparently a helicopter and a school bus that people dive down to. My boyfriend and I decided to go camping for the night. While we were checking in, we separately got a bad feeling about the place, but had kept it to ourselves until later. So at first, it was a good time. We snorkeled in the shallow area of the quarry, and although the depth of the water was a bit uncanny, I still enjoyed myself. The water is 65 feet deep, so once you swam out to the shallow area, it immediately dropped off and it was pitch black. This is actually where I realized I am terrified of water. Besides the dark, deep water, while you are swimming, there is something very scary about a lake being perfectly still. I assume because it is a quarry, the water does not have a current. My boyfriend and I were winding down our night, and we were back at our campsite. We are camping in a grassy patch down a hill from the road. Our tent is pitched in a wooded area that our campsite is excluded to. And just across the green is a campsite that looks well lived in, but our neighbors were out. We're making hot dogs over the fire, and when our neighbors come back, it's nighttime now, and they immediately go to sleep. I'd say 20 to 30 minutes later, they get back is when things started to become spooky. My boyfriend and I are chatting when we noticed a dark figure watching us from up the hill. Because of the shadow of the fire, we couldn't actually make out characteristics of this figure. We knew it was staring directly at us, almost hiding behind our neighbor's truck. It had watched us for what felt like forever until it started walking down the road again. We both watched in horror and in dead silence, watching it walk behind trees, the same ones connected to our campsite, but that almost went in between us and it. I anticipated each time I'd see it walk forward out from behind a tree, then it suddenly stopped appearing. I was totally freaked out. Where did it go? I watched my boyfriend looking at what happened and thinking the same thing, but he had shrugged it off, and I naively did as well. We actually ended up forgetting about it and went to the quarry late at night. It was beautiful seeing the stars up and forgot about it, and then went to the quarry late at night. It was beautiful seeing the stars reflecting off the water, but the deep, now all black water was terrifying to say the least. We walked back to our campsite, lied in our tent, smoked a joint. I soon began to get an uneasy feeling, which I tried to ignore, telling myself it's because I was high. After some silence between us, my boyfriend says to me, "Do you feel like we're being watched?" I said, "Why would you say that?" I was half joking, but serious because I was scared. My boyfriend wanted to get out of the tent, so we were standing by my car, and I got this stupid idea that being in the middle of the field is the safest place to be. My logic being if someone was going to come up at us, at least we'd be able to see them. So we're in the middle of this field when we see the similar looking shadow creature from earlier staring at us again. It must have been 20 feet away. We both noticed it while walking. It's walking our same direction. We changed directions, so did it. Well, we tell one another, we'll change again. And if it does too, we'll book it back to the car. When we changed, it followed. We booked it. I watched it from the seat as it slowly walked into the darkness, staring at us. My boyfriend at this point says, "Let's get out of here." I agree, but all our camping gear is outside. We quietly get our things, not trying to freak the other one out. The weirdest part of this experience, in my opinion, is the next part. My headlights were not working, and there's a weird fog over my windshield that did not go away, no matter what you did. We had to drive out of the woods with only low beams and a strange fog over the window. We could barely see when we got out. Weirdly enough, the fog went away as soon as we got to a gas station. We got home at 1 a.m. I told my dad the experience the next day, and he said he was glad we were out of there because someone or something could have attacked us. 2 people have died at this campground while snorkeling, which I found out after I got back. My boyfriend and I think it was either a person trying to kill us or an upright creature. We've kind of settled on the creature because of what happened was an unexplained incident. Today's next encounter. I have been hiking since 2004, mostly alone, all over Ireland. In December of 2015, I was in a very remote and isolated area of the Serpents Mountain. I had walked to the 3 hilltops surrounded by dense forest and was heading back up the hill towards the tree line to my car when I saw something very tall and large moving faster behind me 1 kilometer away. It was walking, heading downhill toward me on a route I had just taken. I'm not easily spooked, but I didn't hang about, as I am of the opinion that if it wanted to, it could have caught up to me very easily. I have pondered this for a while now, but I do not have a clue what it is to this day, as I see people on hills and mountains at various distances, but this was taller than a 6-foot person at that distance. 8 feet plus is my guess. As I didn't have a gun, just hiking poles, I was not about to wait and find out. My hiking bag now has binoculars added. I have the walk recorded on GPS. I walk all year in the weather, from good to zero visibility, and I am well used to seeing everything appear out of the mist. But on this walk I had great visibility, and I know about optical illusions and what lone trees can give when walking. I don't know what I saw, as I've seen deer, quad bikes on the mountain regularly, along hikers, dogs, runners, depending on where I am. All I can say is this thing that I saw, for want of a better word, was out of the open, following the fence down the hill. I just left the same direction. I was moving fast and was on 2 legs. It was moving fast and on 2 legs, 8 foot plus in height. I'm not one for seeing things, but this was huge and spooked me. I am now going to carry a monocular while hiking, as it's handy to put in my pocket. Even at the age of 50, I have only ever had 3 badgers in Ireland, so I certainly do not rule out anything. As most wild creatures are very cautious and secretive and rarely seen, I would like to see camera traps being set. The area I walked is wetland, but no river, just marshy ground, on my first hill near my starting point up to forests. The hill is known as Carnally West Top, and it is 505 meters. The big thing was coming towards me as I left Carnally West and was walking towards Mulligabane Summit. That's all I can tell you. I actually waited in my car for it to come over the top. As I exited over the summit, turned left heading west, my car parked on the very minor road, yet nothing appeared. All right, guys. I am going to call it an evening. Yes, I record these late at night for the first time in the morning, but I did a lot of research on a couple things that I got emailed to me today. I want to thank you all for supporting this channel. Your support is honestly what keeps this channel growing and going, and honestly what gives people a chance to share their experiences, ideas, and theories, judgment and ridicule free. This channel is amazing to me because of the information you guys have shared with me. I learn more from you guys than you learn from me, and it is appreciative. I really do appreciate it. So thank you. With that being said, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, friends. These creatures are real, they are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.